Welcome, friends. Today we're talking about seed starting indoors. So you might be asking yourself, do you need to start seeds indoors? And the short answer is no, of course not. You don't. But where this can really help is if you have a large garden, if you start, multiple plants, this is really going to save you a lot of money. You can also grow seeds for plants that you won't find in your area for sale. And if you're a planner like me, you're probably going to enjoy the whole process. So first things first, let's talk about shelving. So we have two shelves. They're 3 feet wide, 72 inches tall, and 14 inches deep this way. So this is a standard 10 by 20 tray. So 10 by 20, and this 10-inch tray fits great on this 14-inch shelf. Okay, let's talk about lights. You don't have to shell out a ton of cash for grow lights if you're just wanting to start seeds indoors. Grow lights are really for growing plants and getting them all the way to the fruiting stage. So for our purposes, for seed starting indoors, you can use shop lights. The two most important things to think about when you're selecting your lights are Kelvin and lumens. Kelvin describes the hue or color of the light. The sunlight is 5,250 Kelvin. These lights over here are 6,000 Kelvin, so they're actually similar to sunlight. Now lumens indicate the brightness of the bulb. To grow plants, you want bright lights. More lumens equals more light. Our favorite lights over here are 4,680 lumens. So 6,000 Kelvin, 4,680 lumens. If you're trying to decide between two sets of lights and the only thing different is wattage, go with a lower wattage because wattage equals electricity. The more watts, the more expensive it's going to cost to run those lights. Other things to consider is how many lights you'll need for your setup and what configuration you'll use. We mostly use 2 lights per shelf in our setup. We purchased a set of 8 and it came with enough cords and switches to set them up shelf by shelf. So for each shelf, we chain together 2 lights and then add a switch. So next, let's talk about the heat mat. Heat mats are great for starting warm season crops like tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, things like that. These seeds need a particular temperature for germination, and if your room is cooler than that temperature, then the seeds will not germinate. In our experience, if your room is the correct temperature, then the heating mat will still speed up germination. Now, some heat mats come with a temperature gauge, but we haven't found that to be necessary. We just use a cheap basic heat mat. So these seeds here have a fan that circulates air for them. A fan is crucial for plant development. Do not skip this step. The fan will circulate the air and mimic wind, making the seedling plant stems stronger. This makes a huge difference once you transplant your seedlings into the garden. So we use 2 fans, one on this side and one on this side that oscillates, and they basically just circulate air in our grow room. Next, a timer. While a timer is not specifically required, it helps us a ton. For less than a $10 investment in a timer, you can eliminate the possibility that you might forget to turn your grow lights on or off, or that you may not be home when it's time to turn them on or off. So since we know that seedlings need light that mimics daylight, we set our timer on a 12-hour on, 12-hour off cycle. Don't forget that, these heat mats, the fans, the lights, they all need to plug in. So get yourself a good surge protector or power strip. As far as seed starting mix goes, there are lots of options. This is a good one from Espoma. It's an organic seed starting mix. This one contains peat moss, perlite, limestone, and yucca extract. It also has mycorrhizal fungi, which is great for your soil and your roots. So what we prefer to use indoors is this Miracle-Gro indoor potting mix. Now, most of the time you won't use a potting mix to start seeds. This one is a little chunky, but it's not too bad. All we do is, filter out or pick out the big chunks. The reason we like this one is because we don't want to have to fertilize our seedlings when they're in trays like this. We have just too much going on between, the starting the seeds and potting them up, and we don't want to have to stop and fertilize them. This soil here already has fertilizer in it. Okay, so as far as seed starting trays go, I showed you the 10 by 20 tray already, and you want to make sure that if you're doing this indoors, you want to get ones that do not have holes in the bottom. The ones with holes in the bottom are really useful if you're starting seeds outdoors, so that if it rains, the water can drain through. But if you're indoors, you want one with no holes. We start most of our seeds in 6-pack cell trays like this, and they'll fit inside the 10-20 trays until you have 72 holes, or 72 starts that you could start. Our tomatoes and our peppers, we pot up into these 3.5-inch deep containers when they have their first set of true leaves. Things like squash and things that need more room and don't like their roots necessarily being disturbed, we start in a 2.5-inch, just regular short container. So if you go to our website, jolly-gardens.com, you'll see a blog post that's called Seed Starting Equipment. And on that blog post, we list out how many cells will fit in a 10-by-20 tray. We also use a 128 cell tray for things like lettuce, kale, mizuna, stuff like that. So a lot of people wonder about humidity domes like this here. We live in a really humid climate, so we don't find it really necessary to use humidity domes. We do use them sometimes, but we don't find it terribly necessary. All right, pro tip for you. Always mark your seeds. If you think you're gonna remember what you put in each tray, think again, you're not gonna remember. We love these tags. I mark them with a P-Touch labeler, like this. These tags do not fade in the sun, and only if you have ever broken the whole time I've been using them. I just use the same ones season after season. We start a lot of seeds, and sometimes those are for families. So if I'm starting seeds for family members, sometimes I'll use tags like this, and I'll color code them to what family they go to. So that's it, friends. That's everything we use to start seeds indoors. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll be happy to answer all of your questions. Thanks for watching. So as far as I saw it just a while ago. I have said fart like 3 times already. I've lost my brains.